Why did the sky sound like it was screaming? That's what one of the SEALs asked before the radio cut out. 12 men, pinned in a canyon so deep it swallowed echoes before they could return. They'd been fighting for hours, rifles burning hot, blood turning the dust into mud. Their last transmission wasn't a call for help. It was a farewell, a man trying to make peace with dying far from home. Command had already typed the report, KIA presumed. Then came that sound. Low, angry, familiar. Not rescue, retribution. The soldiers who heard it knew the legend. 2 years earlier, a pilot had carved her way through the same stretch of mountains, defying geometry, logic, and every order given. She made it out alive. Barely. They called her Reaper. The command called her a problem. They grounded her, erased her name from flight rosters, said she'd gone too far saving men who were already statistically unsalvageable. But now the sky was screaming again. And deep inside the operations center at Bagram Airfield, no one wanted to believe what they were seeing. Bagram sat beneath a pale, merciless sun, the kind that made metal shimmer and air feel thin, the kind that punished waiting. Captain Kira Wolf sat on a dented bench outside Hangar 14. Her flight suit was half unzipped, the tank top beneath it streaked with engine grease and a scar that ran across her collarbone, a memory that never faded. She hadn't flown in 8 months. 8 months of silence. 8 months of watching her aircraft, Warthog 51, sit under a tarp that looked more like a shroud. She didn't look at the sky anymore. It hadn't looked back in a long time. The tarmac was alive, forklifts moving, mechanics shouting, smell of fuel thick enough to taste. Every day she sat there, same bench, same hour, same view. She didn't know what she was waiting for, forgiveness maybe, or a reason. That reason arrived in the shape of 2 words, dropped by a passing mechanic. Coast Canyon. He didn't stop walking, didn't explain, didn't have to. Kira stood. Those words hit like an electric current. Everyone on base knew what Coast Canyon meant. It was where hope went to die. It was where aircraft disappeared from radar, where rescue teams found only twisted metal and sand turned red. She didn't ask who said it or why. She didn't ask permission. Her boots struck the tarmac, fast, decisive. The walk of a pilot who's already made her choice. A young crew chief spotted her halfway across the flight line. Barely 22, clean face, steady hands. He froze when he saw her. Everyone knew that face, that walk. He reached for his radio, then stopped. His hand dropped. The kind of silence that says, I didn't see anything. Kira ran a hand along Warthog 51's fuselage. Metal, hot from the sun, rough under her fingertips. The skin of a sleeping beast. Patches from bullet holes still visible. They'd never bothered to repaint it. Easier to let it rust than admit they might need her again. Ma'am, you're not cleared to. She was already halfway up the ladder. The cockpit smelled like old leather, oil, and ghosts. She sat, and for the first time in months, her heartbeat found a rhythm that made sense. Switches flipped, battery on, master arm, APU start. The panels came alive one by one, reluctantly, as if the machine itself was waking from a coma. Fuel 68%. Hydraulics yellow. Flares questionable. Gun green. Good enough. Outside, sunlight turned the canopy into a mirror. Inside, her reflection looked older, sharper, emptier. But her eyes were the same. The eyes of someone who'd seen men left behind once and swore never again. She pushed the throttle forward. Inside the Flight Ops Center, alarms started to chirp. Staff Sergeant Delgado looked up from his console. Sir, we've got an unauthorized engine start. Hangar 14. Lieutenant Colonel Caldwell didn't even look up at first. Identify. Delgado typed. The tail number flashed on screen. He froze. Warthog 51, Alpha 729er. Every officer in the room turned at once. Caldwell's jaw tightened. Who authorized that? No one, sir. No flight plan filed, no clearance. Major Hammond, the operations officer, closed his eyes. He already knew. Wolf. Caldwell's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. Get me the tower. In the tower, Sergeant Rodriguez stared through thick glass as the A-10 rolled toward the runway. No call sign, no comms, just movement. Purposeful. Warthog 51, you are not cleared for taxi, he said into his mic. Return to Hangar 14 immediately. No response. Warthog 51, acknowledge. This is a direct order. The radio stayed dead. Rodriguez watched the A-10 line up on the runway, the engine screaming, heat waves dancing behind it. Sir, she's taking the runway. Caldwell's voice came through, sharp and useless. Stop her. Too late. The Warthog surged forward, wheels clawing at concrete, lifting like something angry at gravity itself. The takeoff was brutal, almost violent. Rodriguez exhaled, half in awe, half in fear. She's airborne. Inside the cockpit, Kira's breathing steadied. G-forces pressed her spine into the seat. The aircraft felt heavy at first, reluctant, but it responded. Machines remember. The radio came alive with angry voices. Tower, command, security, even Caldwell himself. Wolf, turn around. That's not a request. She keyed her mic once. There already were consequences. Then silence. 40 kilometers east, Master Chief Kingston was running out of time. Pinned against stone, his SEAL team was scattered across 30 meters of broken terrain. Crossfire from 3 sides. 2 dead, 3 wounded, ammo nearly gone. He fought in 20-year wars, seen the impossible and survived, but training didn't change physics. They were trapped. His young comms operator, Webb, leaned in. Hammer, we're down to 40 rounds each. Kingston didn't look up. Make M count. Across from them, Doc Monroe pressed a bloody bandage into a leg wound. The kid beneath him, Mason Fletcher, barely 24, tried to grin. Doc, can't feel my leg. That's the morphine, kid, you're fine. He wasn't fine, but lies are a kind of medicine too. High above, on the northern ridge, Commander Rashid Ahmadi watched through binoculars. He'd fought on both sides once. Wore American patches before the war took his family. He knew every canyon here like a scar. They've stopped firing, said Kareem, his second-in-command. They're conserving ammunition, Rashid replied. It won't matter. He looked toward the east, toward the horizon. The Americans will send help. They always do. They'll send jets. He nodded, and the canyon will eat them alive. Back at base, chaos tightened like a noose. Caldwell paced behind a wall of monitors. Available air assets. Hammond's voice was grave. 2 Apache, 4 F-16s, 1 Reaper drone. Get them airborne. Sir, the canyon has a 92% loss rate. Apache won't risk it. F-16s can't fly that low. That's a kill box. Caldwell turned slowly. Those are 12 Americans dying out there. We don't write them off. Before Hammond could respond, Delgado shouted from his console. Sir, unauthorized aircraft on radar, heading straight for the canyon. Caldwell's stomach dropped. Confirm ID. Warthog 51. For a moment, no one spoke. Caldwell's voice turned cold. Get me visual. On the screen, the A-10's radar trace carved a path straight toward the canyon, a low, steady altitude. No hesitation. Hammond whispered, she's really doing it. Caldwell didn't answer. If she makes it, extraction birds hold at 15 clicks. If she fails, he stopped himself. Just be ready. In the sky, Kira's hands moved like they had a mind of their own. Switches, trim, flaps, muscle memory. She flew low, hugging terrain. The mountains rose ahead, jagged, ancient, unwelcoming. The entrance to Coast Canyon looked like a mouth ready to swallow her whole. Her radio crackled again. Reaper, this is Storm Glass. Kira froze. That call sign, it was impossible. Storm, she whispered. Colonel Catherine Sloan, her first instructor, retired years ago, the woman who'd taught her to fly the A-10. You're heading into the throat, Sloan said. They're saying you're not cleared, that you're violating orders. Yes, ma'am. A pause, then a sigh that sounded like the past catching up. Then remember what I taught you. Fly low, trust the bird, don't think. And if you're gonna do something stupid, do it fast. Sloan almost laughed. Good hunting, Reaper. Kira smiled just once. Copy that. She leveled out. The canyon loomed ahead, black rock against a sun that couldn't reach its depths. Inside the SEAL position, Kingston keyed his mic one last time. This is Indigo 5. Heavy fire, multiple casualties. We're out of time. Static, then a voice none of them expected. This is Reaper, 2 minutes out. Kingston froze. The team looked up. Say again. 2 minutes, keep your heads down. Kingston's jaw set. He didn't believe in miracles, but he believed in legends. And the legend was coming home. How do you fly into a place that's killed everyone before you? You don't think about the numbers. You don't think about survival. You just fly. Kira Wolf dropped below the radar horizon. The sky narrowed into a slit of light above her canopy, and the walls of Coast Canyon began to rise like dark cathedral pillars. Every pilot who'd entered here had died. That thought should have made her hands tremble. It didn't. She'd already died 8 months ago when they took away her wings. The altimeter screamed, 200 feet, 180. She silenced the alarm. Machines could panic, she couldn't. The canyon wound like a living thing, twisting left, then right, each turn daring her to misjudge by a meter. The Warthog groaned through the turbulence, heavy, loyal, scarred. Her aircraft wasn't designed for elegance. It was designed for revenge. Her radio came alive again. Reaper, you copy. This is Bram Tactical. You're entering the narrowest section. Crosswinds gusting to 30 knots. It was Lieutenant Ahmed Bashir, the Afghan Air Force liaison, calm, precise, a man who knew these canyons better than any American. Copy all, she said. He hesitated. Good luck, Captain. Luck ran out months ago. She banked into the next bend. The walls closed in 50 feet apart, maybe less. Her wings spanned 57. She had to roll the aircraft onto its side, knife edge through the corridor, riding the fine line between gravity and faith. Metal screamed. The canyon roared back. Sparks trailed where her wingtips brushed rock. 8 seconds of impossible. Then light returned. The canyon widened barely 60 feet, but enough to breathe again. The radio hissed, then a new voice, hoarse, steady. This is Indigo 5. We're down to last mags. If you're hearing this, it's already too late. Kira keyed her mic. Negative hammer, 2 minutes, sit tight. There was silence, then disbelief. Say again. 2 minutes, keep your heads down. She could hear murmurs in the background, one voice whispering, "Is that Wolf?" On the canyon floor, Master Chief Kingston lifted his head. The sound reached first, a deep, rattling thunder that didn't belong in this valley. Then the shadows swept across them. The A-10. Low, fast, monstrous. Holy hell, someone whispered. Kingston didn't answer. He just smiled, the first real smile in hours. From her cockpit, Kira saw everything. Years of flight training taught her to read battlefields like stories, where dust moved, where light flickered, where fear lived. The SEALs were pinned in a shallow basin, no cover, enemy rifles nested along 3 ridges. North Ridge, heaviest fire. East Slope, RPGs. South Outcrop, backup teams repositioning. She exhaled once, let's dance. Her thumb rested on the trigger. The GAU-8 Avenger cannon, the A-10's heart, 7 barrels, 30 millimeters of judgment. The world called it the BRRRT. Pilots called it something else, salvation. She dipped her nose 5 degrees. Sight locked and squeezed. The sound was less like gunfire and more like the sky tearing open. 70 rounds of depleted uranium cut the ridge in half. Rock turned to dust. Bodies vanished into smoke. The entire aircraft shook from recoil. It slowed midair, clawing against physics. 2 seconds. That's all it took to change the battlefield. She pulled up, barely clearing the eastern wall by 10 feet. Below, Kingston shouted, "Move now." The team scrambled, dragging the wounded, firing short bursts to cover each other. Doc Monroe hauled Fletcher, the kid still half-conscious, blood soaking through his pant leg. Above, Kira banked, eyes scanning for movement. Their east slope a flash of metal, RPG. She rolled inverted, diving upside down to line up the shot. Trigger squeeze, 1 second burst, explosion, secondary detonation. The ridge erupted again. The RPG team ceased to exist. North ridge clear, east neutralized, south outcrop still active. Kingston's voice came through. "Copy," Kira replied, making another pass. But before she could bank, a shimmer caught her eyes, sunlight glinting off something metallic. Then the warning tone screamed. "Missile launch." She didn't think. Thinking was a luxury. 1, 2, 3, she punched flares. White magnesium streaks burst behind her. The missile followed the heat, exploded in a fireball 50 feet aft. The shockwave hit her like a fist. Warning lights blinked red. Left stabilizer damaged, still controllable. She rolled back into the canyon, coming around for another pass. Her hands were steady, heartbeat slow. Fear lived somewhere else now, far behind, back on that bench outside Hangar 14. "Reaper, North Ridge, and East are quiet," Kingston said. "You bought us breathing room." "Not done yet," she replied. Up on the ridgeline, Rashid watched the chaos through his binoculars. Dust clouds, smoke columns, his fighters scattering like ants. "She flies differently," Karim muttered beside him. "Better," Rashid said, more desperate. He lowered the binoculars. "Pull the men back to secondary positions." Karim frowned. "She's clearing the canyon." "No," Rashid said, smiling faintly. "She's walking into the trap, and that's where we kill her." He looked south toward the canyon choke point, a narrow slit where the walls closed to 43 feet. No aircraft survived that turn. He'd made sure of it. Back at Bagram, the operations center had become a church of silence. Everyone stood around screens showing the drone feed, distant, grainy, haunting. Warthog 51 Dove vanished beneath radar coverage and didn't return. "Sir," Delgado said quietly, "we've lost contact." Caldwell folded his arms. "She's below cover. Leave the channel open." Hammond's voice was low. "She either just made history or she's gone." No one replied. The canyon swallowed the aircraft again. Shadows thickened. Every meter was a coin toss between skill and luck. Kira leaned into the stick, feeling every vibration through her bones. A memory rose, uninvited, vivid. 8 months ago, a different canyon. 12 soldiers on patrol, ambush pinned. Command ordered withdrawal. "Leave the wounded," they'd said. "Statistical loss." Kira didn't leave them. She landed her A-10 in a dry riverbed, under fire, engines coughing, and loaded the wounded into the internal bay, a space meant for equipment, not men. Takeoff was half miracle, half suicide. She cleared the ridge with 15 feet to spare. Both soldiers lived. Command called it reckless endangerment. That was the day she learned saving lives could cost you your own. Now, looking down at the trapped SEALs, she knew she'd make the same choice again. Her radio crackled. "Reaper, this is TOC. You're approaching the choke point. Canyon narrows to 45 feet, wind sheer ahead." "Copy," she said. Bashir added, "If you bank knife edge, you might fit." "Has anyone done it before?" "No one survived doing it." "Then I'll be first." She reached the bend. The canyon tilted, walls slanting inward like jaws closing. She rolled 90 degrees, wings vertical, flying sideways through stone. The entire world became a blur of rock, shadow, and screaming metal. The altimeter spun, 200 feet, 150. Her left wing missed the wall by less than a meter. 8 endless seconds. Then she rolled level again. The canyon opened to a basin ahead, wide enough to breathe. Below movement, 12 shapes hugging stone, the seals. Kira smiled. I see you. She dove, lined up another run, short, controlled bursts this time, precision over rage. BRRRT. Dust and silence followed. When she pulled up again, the north ridge was gone. Kingston looked up from behind cover. That's her, he murmured. Told you she'd come. Doc Monroe grinned through blood and sweat. She's insane. Kingston reloaded his rifle. Yeah, but she's our kind of insane. Caldwell exhaled for the first time in an hour. On the monitors, drone feeds showed fire fatting, movement slowing. She did it, Hammond said. Not yet, Caldwell replied quietly. She's still in the canyon. Captain Alina Viper Ruiz leaned against the doorway, arms folded. F-16 pilot. Once Kira's closest friend, now her quiet rival. You're letting her do this alone? She asked. Caldwell didn't turn. She made her choice. Then I'll go cover her. You'll die trying. Sit tight, Captain. Ruiz's jaw flexed, but she didn't argue. She knew the canyon's math. She also knew Kira. Math never stopped her. Kira dropped lower, passing just 50 feet above the seals' heads. She could see them clearly now, 12 shadows, 2 being carried, 1 waving weakly. Alive, still fighting. She didn't wave back. There was no time for sentiment. Ahead she saw the next bend, the choke point Bashir warned about. Narrow, black, waiting. Her gut twisted. Something felt wrong. The quiet between gunfire wasn't victory, it was setup. She keyed her mic. Hammer, how mobile are you? Kingston answered through static. 2 wounded. We can move slow. Extraction birds are standing by, but I need to clear your exit. Negative, Reaper, you've done enough. There is no other way. Silence. How bad? Kingston finally asked. Bad enough. Then don't do it. Not your call. She banked toward the south. Fuel gauge read 49%, enough for maybe 3 more passes. Her radio flared with a new voice, familiar, sharp. Kira, turn around. That's an order. Ruiz. Not now, Alina. You've cleared them a path. If you go deeper, you won't come out. I've been through worse. No, you haven't. I've got thermals. Rashid waiting for you, 20 fighters minimum. Then I won't keep him waiting. Damn it, Kira, you're not proving a point. You're dying for one. Kira's tone turned ice cold. Those soldiers I saved last year, they've got families, futures. I'll die for that every time. She switched frequencies. Silence returned. The canyon narrowed again. Shadows swallowed the light. She took a breath, leveled the wings, and pushed the throttle forward. Somewhere behind her, command centers and satellites screamed warnings. Somewhere ahead, a man who'd lost everything waited to make her join him. And between them was a canyon full of ghosts. What drives someone to keep going when everyone else turns back? Pride, duty, guilt. For Kira Wolf, it wasn't any of those. It was something quieter, something that lived between breaths, the belief that if she could save just one more, maybe the noise inside her would finally stop. But the noise never stopped. The canyon ahead curved into shadow. Rock formations jutted like teeth, cliffs pulsed with heat mirages. Her instruments flickered, sensors scrambled by interference. That was Rashid's advantage. He knew this terrain like memory. She was flying blind. Warthog 51, this is base control, came Caldwell's voice, strained, distant. We're losing your telemetry. Repeat, your signal is dropping. Kira said nothing. Talking meant thinking, thinking meant hesitating. Instead, she looked down at the photo taped to the dashboard, a faded Polaroid. 12 people, a dusty airfield, her old squadron. 3 of them were gone now. One was Elena Ruiz. The one taking the photo was her. She reached up and tapped the corner of the picture with a gloved finger once, like a ritual, then pushed the throttle another notch forward. The engines roared. The canyon swallowed her whole. Down below, Kingston and the surviving SEALs moved fast, weaving between rocks and ruins. Dust stuck to their sweat. Blood crusted on their gear. Webb carried the radio on his back, barely functioning, the antenna half shot off. He kept glancing up, as if expecting another pass. "Where's she going?" he shouted. Kingston didn't answer, he knew. He just didn't want to believe it. She wasn't leaving them, she was going deeper. Doc Monroe cursed under his breath. "She's chasing the source. That's suicide." Kingston reloaded, teeth clenched. "She's buying us time, let her." Behind them, the sky glowed orange where her last strafing run had hit. The smell of burnt powder lingered in the air. Mason, half-conscious, muttered, "That sound, I thought it was thunder." Monroe smiled grimly. "That's the sound of someone who doesn't quit." Rashid waited near the southern ridge. His command post dug into the canyon wall, shielded by rock. He watched the contrails overhead, thin and twisting like veins in the sky. "She's coming," Karim said quietly. Rashid nodded. "Of course she is. That's what makes her dangerous." "Dangerous," Karim repeated. "She fights for ghosts," Rashid replied. "Men who are already gone. You can't win against someone who doesn't fear losing." He set down his binoculars, his gaze softening. "She reminds me of my brother." Karim frowned. "The one who died at the border." Rashid nodded once. "He flew too, believed in something pure. The war taught us purity dies first." A sound echoed in the distance, the thunder of turbines. He looked up. "Get the launchers ready." Inside the cockpit, Kira scanned her HUD. Warnings flashed, engine temps rising, hydraulic pressure unstable. She ignored them. The A-10 was built to survive worse. The canyon twisted again, the air thinning. She dipped lower, scanning. Nothing but static and stone. "Bashir, you still reading me?" His voice cracked through. Faintly, "You're in the southern corridor. Satellite coverage blind. If you keep going, no one will find you." "I'm not here to be found." "You think they'll remember you?" he asked softly. She hesitated. "Doesn't matter if they do." Bashir's tone hardened. "It matters to those who live because of you." She wanted to answer, but before she could, the radar warning blared. "Missile lock." She slammed the throttle, dropped altitude, flares punching out behind like white stars. One missile broke off, the other didn't. Impact near miss. The left wing rocked violently, alarms flashing. She corrected with brute instinct, pulling the stick opposite, feeling the frame groan. "Damage," Bashir called. "Superficial." She paused, checking gauges. "Okay, maybe more than superficial." Fuel pressure dropping, stabilizer damaged further. The A-10 limped, stubborn, bleeding smoke but alive. She steadied her breathing. Reaper still flies. At Bagram, silence blanketed the ops center. The Reaper drone feed had lost her completely. Caldwell stood behind Delgado. "Anything?" "Nothing, sir. She's off radar. All signals dead." Ruiz clenched her fists. "Then send someone else in." Hammond turned, exasperated. "You want to die too, Captain." "I want to bring her back." Caldwell finally looked up. "No one's coming back from that canyon." Ruiz's voice cracked. "You don't know her like I do." He stared at her. "You're right, I don't, but I know the odds." She shot back. "She's been beating odds her whole life." And with that, Ruiz turned and walked out. Caldwell didn't stop her. Maybe part of him hoped she was right. Meanwhile, down in the canyon, Kira scanned the ridges. She saw movement, 2 technicals, light trucks with mounted guns, crawling toward the SEAL's last known position. She adjusted her heading. Indigo 5, be advised, incoming hostiles north of your position. Get to cover. Kingston's voice came back through gritted teeth. Copy, you seeing them? Affirmative. Then give him hell. She smiled faintly, already on it. She dove. The gun run was surgical short bursts, pinpoint accuracy. Bullets chewed through the lead vehicle. Explosion. The second tried to veer, too late. 2 plumes of smoke rose like pillars. The SEALs cheered faintly over the radio, half relief, half disbelief. Reaper, you're a damn angel, Webb said. Kira's tone stayed steady. Angels don't fly this low. But Rashid wasn't done. He stepped into the open, radio in hand, calm as a priest at a funeral. She's good, he told Karim, but she's predictable. He gave the signal. 2 hidden launchers unfolded on the cliffside, far deeper inside the canyon, invisible from above. She'll fly through here, he said, pointing to a narrow ridge. Right along this vector, that's her kill zone. Karim looked uneasy. And the SEALs? They'll die anyway. This is about her now. Rashid's eyes hardened. Every empire needs its lesson. The sound of wind filled the cockpit. Kira's oxygen mask hissed with each breath. Her mind drifted for a moment back to her first flight. She'd been 19. A sky so clear it looked infinite. Her instructor, Sloan, sitting behind her, saying, "You'll either fall in love with this or it'll kill you trying." She laughed then. She wasn't laughing now. The radio crackled again, faint and warped by static. "Reaper, this is Storm Glass." Sloan again. Kira blinked, almost doubting her ears. "Storm. Satellite feed caught your tail. You're leaking fuel." "I know. Turn around." "Can't." "You've done enough, Kira. They'll make it." Kira looked at the map overlay, the blinking dots marking the SEAL team's location. They were still too deep. "They won't unless I clear the exit." A long pause, then Sloane's voice softer now. "You remind me of me. That's not a compliment." Kira's lips curved faintly. "You always said to finish what you start. And sometimes finishing means surviving." "Not this time." Static swallowed the line. She leveled the nose, engine straining. The canyon widened briefly, a moment of reprieve before the next curve. The A-10's frame rattled. Warning tones flashed red across the console. "Left engine critical," the computer droned. Yeah, she muttered. "You're fine." Then she saw it, a faint shimmer of heat along the ridge ahead. "Launchers." She didn't have seconds. She had half a breath. She rolled the aircraft sharply, dropping chaff and flares, nose angled toward the wall. Missiles streaked from both sides, converging. She yanked the stick, diving into the blast zone. The missiles collided midair, detonating in a storm of fire. The shockwave hit her square. The A-10 flipped inverted, alarms blaring, fuel spraying into the air like silver rain. For a moment, everything went white. Then gravity returned. She fought the controls, the bird heavy, shaking, uncooperative. Her breathing grew ragged. "Come on," she whispered, "stay with me." The aircraft leveled barely. Smoke trailed behind like a wounded comet. "Bashir," she gasped into the mic. "Target's neutralized, but I'm hit bad." "Copy, Reaper. Egress north if you can." She looked at her map. The northern exit meant threading back through the canyon, narrower than before, wind worse. "Negative, 2 damaged. I'll hold position, cover the SEALs." Bashir's voice cracked. "That's suicide." "Yeah," she said quietly, "I know." Down below, Kingston looked up again. The sky was turning to smoke and fire, echoing with the fatting growl of turbines. He keyed his mic. "Reaper, we see your smoke. You okay?" "Define okay," she said, forcing a weak laugh. "Can you make it out?" Maybe, a pause, but I'm not leaving until you do. Reaper. Move, Chief, that's an order. He hesitated, then nodded, even though she couldn't see him. Copy that. The SEALs began to move, carrying the wounded, heading toward the extraction zone that was now, miraculously, open. Behind them, the sound of her engine roared again, one last defiant growl against silence. In the ops center, Delgado stared at his screen. Sir, she's back on radar, altitude dropping fast. Caldwell leaned forward, heading south by southwest. Looks like she's holding over the canyon mouth. Ruiz whispered, she's protecting them. Caldwell exhaled quietly, God help her. Inside the cockpit, warning lights flashed like a Christmas tree. Fuel critical, engine failing, systems breaking. Kira's hand stayed steady, her voice calm. She keyed the open channel. Indigo 5, I've got your backs till the last bullet. Kingston's voice came raw, we'll make it count. She smiled faintly, I know you will. Then quieter to herself, just one more minute. The canyon glowed below, smoke curled upward, the bird shuddered but still flew. For now, when does courage stop being bravery and start becoming surrender? Maybe it's when the body quits but the mind refuses. Maybe it's when someone like Kira Wolf decides there's no line between the two anymore. The A-10 shook beneath her, wounded and angry, every vibration a reminder of how close she was to falling from the sky. The left engine sputtered, coughing black smoke. The gauges danced erratically. The world below blurred, smoke, sand, and sunlight bleeding into one. Her radio crackled again. Reaper, this is Indigo 5. We're clear of the southern ridge. 10 minutes to extraction. Copy, she said. Keep moving north. Kingston's tone sharpened. You're not answering the question we didn't ask. Can you make it out? She smiled faintly. Wouldn't that ruin the suspense? Static, then his quiet reply. You already did enough. She looked down at the canyon floor, jagged, endless. Not yet. At Bagram, the command center had turned into a war room of silence. Everyone stood around glowing monitors showing flickering drone feeds, pieces of a story they couldn't control. Captain Elena Ruiz leaned over the console, helmet in hand, voice barely a whisper. Her bird's dying. Caldwell didn't respond. He just stared at the data streaming in, fuel, altitude, speed numbers collapsing one by one. Sir, Hammond said, if she stays, she's not coming back. Caldwell's jaw tightened. She made that decision the moment she took off. Ruiz turned toward him. You think this is discipline? It's grief. She's trying to erase what happened last time. He finally looked up, and maybe grief's what keeps the rest of us alive. She wanted to argue, but the look in his eyes stopped her. They'd all lost people. Everyone had ghosts. Hers just flew with call signs. Down in the canyon, Rashid adjusted his radio headset, eyes fixed on the rising smoke. She's still airborne, Karim said, disbelief heavy in his voice. Rashid didn't look away. A-10s were built for this. They don't die easy. But she can't climb out. Then she'll die in here. It's just a matter of where. He studied the sky through the dust. Send the last team forward. If she tries to protect the soldiers again, she'll expose herself. Karim hesitated. Sir, they're men with rifles against a plane. Rashid's eyes narrowed. So was I once. Orders. Karim nodded reluctantly and disappeared into the haze. Kira leveled out, the nose of the Warthog trembling. Her breathing was steady now, the kind of calm that comes after every other emotion burns away. The heads-up display flickered, half the indicators dead. She flew on instinct. Her canopy reflected a pale, tired face, streaked with sweat, eyes focused somewhere far away. Bashir, she called, status on evac birds. 2 Black Hawks inbound, his voice came through static. ETA 8 minutes, you won't have that long. She exhaled, that's my kind of math. You can still eject, he said quickly. The SEALs will make it, no one will blame you. She smiled without humor. That's the problem, Bashir, I would. A pause, then his quiet reply, then God be with you. Below, Kingston's team reached the extraction zone, a flat plateau surrounded by low cliffs. Dust hung heavy. The sound of distant engines echoed through the canyon like a heartbeat. Webb dropped to one knee, setting up the signal flare. They'll see us, right? Yeah, Kingston said, they'll see us. He didn't say what he really thought, that their survival depended entirely on one woman keeping an aircraft alive against physics. Doc Monroe wiped sweat from his eyes, scanning the ridges. You think she's still up there? Kingston nodded slowly. If she wasn't, we'd already know. The wind shifted, a low rumble growing louder. Then the sky roared again. The A-10 swooped overhead, low enough that Kingston could see the damage. One engine streaming fire, fuselage pitted with holes, wing edges shredded, but it still flew. Kira's voice came over the radio, strained but composed. Extraction birds, this is Reaper, marking LZ with smoke, threats on southern ridge. Copy Reaper, one of the pilots answered, inbound hot. She dropped a red smoke canister, banking hard to strafe the ridge. Her rounds tore through the rock face, scattering dust and gunfire alike. On the ground, the SEALs moved to cover the landing zone. Kingston shielded his eyes, watching her pass overhead. That's the last of her ammo, Webb said quietly. Kingston nodded. She's not planning on reloading. Back at command, Ruiz leaned close to the mic. Kira, it's Alina. Talk to me. No response. Kira, you can still pull out. You did it once before. Still silence. Ruiz's voice cracked. Don't make me watch you die again. Finally, static broke. Alina, Kira said softly, you remember what you told me after that training sortie in Nevada? Ruiz frowned. Which one? The one where I clipped the ridge, and you thought I was dead. I said I'd kill you myself if you scared me like that again. Kira almost laughed. Guess I'm still bad at taking orders. Kira. But the channel went dead. Rashid's men reached the lower ridge. They fired upward, rifles cracking, rounds sparking off the A-10's belly as it passed overhead. Keep her attention, Rashid ordered. She's running out of sky. He knew what she'd do next. He'd studied pilots like her all his life, the ones who'd rather die saving others than live walking away. She'll circle back, he murmured. They always circle back. Kira pulled hard on the stick, turning for one final pass. Below, the extraction birds appeared, dark silhouettes against the sun, rotors chopping the air. Black Hawk 1, I've got your flank, she radioed. Copy Reaper, we see your smoke. LZ looks hot. Not for long. She dove. The last of her rounds spat fire down the ridge, carving a curtain of dust between the SEALs and the enemy line. Her engine coughed, flames sputtering out, the cockpit filled with alarms. Fuel critical, the computer warned. She ignored it. Reaper, you're leaking, came Bashir's panicked voice. You need to eject now. Her hand hovered over the ejection lever. One pull, and she'd be safe, drifting down on silk while the Warthog finished dying without her. But safety wasn't what she came for. Her eyes fell again on the photo taped to the dash, her old squadron, laughing, alive. One of them, Lieutenant Sarah Dean, had died on a rescue op that command called acceptable loss. That phrase had haunted Kira ever since. She whispered to the photo, no more acceptable losses. And she pushed the throttle to full. Down below, the SEALs watched in awe as the A-10 screamed overhead one last time. Its engines were more fire than metal now. She's not pulling up, Monroe said, voice trembling. Kingston raised his binoculars. She's going for the ridge. She's gonna hit. No, Kingston said softly, she's aiming. Rashid realized too late what she was doing. Get down, he shouted, diving for cover. The A-10 roared straight through the canyon mouth, clipping the ridge where his men had clustered. The impact wasn't a crash, it was an execution. The explosion rolled through the canyon like thunder tearing heaven apart. The shockwave hit the plateau seconds later, knocking men to the ground. Dust and debris rained from the sky. When it cleared, the ridge was gone. And so was the A-10. Silence. Then faintly, over the calm static, then a voice. "This is Indigo 5, LZ secure. Repeat, LZ secure." Cheers erupted over the radio. The Black Hawks descended, rotors kicking up sand. Kingston helped the wounded aboard, looking one last time toward the smoke column rising from the southern ridge. "Reaper," he whispered, "you did it." The pilot of the lead Black Hawk glanced back. "You said she was A-10, right?" "Yeah. I saw something eject before the blast. Parachute drifted east." Kingston's eyes snapped up. "You sure?" The pilot nodded, "Pretty sure." Kingston's grin was faint but real. "Then we're not done yet." At Bagram, the feed showed only static now. Caldwell removed his headset slowly, shoulders heavy. "Any word?" Delgado shook his head. "No signal, no beacon." Ruiz stared at the blank monitor, whispering, "She ejected. I know she did." Hammond sighed. "There's no confirmation." "She doesn't need confirmation," Ruiz said firmly. "She just needs time." Caldwell looked at her, expression unreadable. Then he nodded once. "Then let's give her that." Far from the canyon, a lone parachute drifted through pale sky. Below it, a figure hung limp but alive, one arm twisted against her harness. Kira's eyes fluttered open. The world was smoke and distance. Her ears rang, every breath a knife. She looked down, desert stretching endlessly, the canyon now a black scar behind her. The A-10 was gone, her bird, her war. She closed her eyes again. "Told you I'd finish what I started." The wind carried her east, toward unknown hills, away from the noise, into silence. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel empty. How long can silence last before it starts to sound like memory? Kira Wolf didn't remember the landing. One moment, the roar of fire and steel, the next, the hiss of sand and wind. She opened her eyes to a dim, gold-washed world. The parachute dragged beside her, flapping weakly across stone. Her right leg screamed. Pain meant she was alive. That was good enough. She rolled onto her side, coughing dust. The desert smelled of burnt jet fuel and iron. In the distance, the canyon still smoked, a jagged scar against the horizon. Somewhere down there, the seals were being lifted out. Somewhere down there, part of her still burned with the wreckage. She unclipped her harness, crawled to her knees. The sun was brutal, carving everything into white and shadow. Her visor was cracked, her flight suit torn. No radio, no beacon, only the emergency knife strapped to her thigh and the desert stretching like eternity. "Great," she muttered. "You survive a crash just to die dehydrated." But dying quietly wasn't in her DNA. She pulled herself upright, tested her leg, half useless but workable. Every pilot trained for ejection survival. What they didn't train for was what happens when nobody knows you're alive. She looked to the east. The wind carried faint smoke from the canyon, but beyond that, nothing. Just empty ridges, dunes, and silence so deep it made her ears ring. At Bagram, they called off the search after 4 hours. Satellite passes found no heat signatures, no movement, only wreckage. Caldwell filed the report himself. Pilot presumed KIA. The words typed themselves. His hand hesitated before signing, then didn't. Ruiz watched him from across the room. "You don't believe that?" "I believe facts," he said quietly. "She ejected. There's no chute on the satellite images. She was below coverage when it deployed. You know how those blind spots work." He looked up weary. "Then pray your faith is stronger than my math." She stepped closer, voice low. You grounded her once, don't bury her twice. He didn't answer. He just looked at the empty sky on the monitor, where the A-10's transponder used to be, and whispered, "Godspeed, Reaper." The desert turned from gold to blood red as the sun began to fall. Kiera limped across a field of broken stone, rationing every drop from her survival pouch. Her throat was raw, her skin blistered under her flight suit. The adrenaline that had kept her moving was fading. Now there was only exhaustion and the ghosts that came with it. Every step she heard them. The voices of the 12 soldiers she saved last year, the ones command called statistical anomalies. She saw their faces in the shimmer of heat. "You did good, Reaper. We made it home. You're still out here, aren't you?" She stopped walking, closed her eyes. The desert was too quiet, the kind of quiet that made memory louder than reality. When she opened her eyes again, she saw movement, a flicker of shadow across a dune. She froze. Too deliberate to be wind, too slow to be mirage. Her hand found the emergency pistol strapped to her belt, tiny, old, but better than nothing. She crouched low, breathing through her teeth, scanning the horizon. Then she heard it, a faint metallic click. Not friendly. Rashid had survived. The explosion had thrown him deep into the rocks, his arm broken, his hearing half gone. But anger kept him alive where mercy would have killed him. He had lost every man he led, wiped away by the woman who flew like vengeance itself. Now, staggering across the ridgeline, rifle slung over one shoulder, he saw her parachute tangled below. For a moment he simply stared, the pilot her. "You don't die easy," he muttered. He started limping toward her. Kiera spotted him minutes later, a figure limping through dust, rifle glinting. Her pulse spiked. She ducked behind a rock, mind calculating distance, wind, visibility. The pistol in her hand looked pathetic compared to his weapon, but she had something he didn't: patience. She waited, watched. He was hurt, left side dragging, movement slow, but still dangerous. When he reached the base of the slope, she stepped out, gun leveled. "Drop it." He froze, startled by the voice, then smiled. "So the ghost lives." "Drop it," she said again. He let the rifle slip to the ground, raising his hands. "If I wanted you dead, I would have shot first." "You tried that already," she said. "Didn't work." Rashid's smile faded. "You killed my men. They chose this canyon. I just flew through it." He tilted his head, studying her, the cracked visor, the blood on her sleeve, the way she kept weight off one leg. "You're bleeding, and you have no water. I've had worse first dates." A dry laugh escaped him despite himself. "You Americans, even dying, you make jokes." She gestured with the pistol. "Keep talking, it helps me aim." He lowered his hand slowly. "There's a village east of here, half a day's walk. You won't make it alone. And you think I'll take directions from the guy who tried to shoot me down?" He shrugged. "You could kill me now, or you could use me to live." She hesitated. He saw it, the flicker of calculation behind her eyes. Trust was a luxury, but survival was math. Finally she said, "You walk first." They moved in silence as the night came down. The desert turned cold fast, the air sharp enough to bite. Every step was agony, but Kiera kept moving, pistol never leaving her hand. Rashid led the way, favoring his side but steady. Occasionally he glanced back. She never looked away. "Why didn't you finish me?" she finally asked. He didn't turn. "Killing you wouldn't bring my men back." "That's not mercy, that's exhaustion." He smiled faintly. "Maybe both." After a while he said, "You remind me of someone, my brother, he flew too. I heard. He believed war could be clean. I told him it couldn't, I was right." He looked up at the stars, sighing. "You Americans think heroism is enough. It's not. It burns too fast." Kiera's tone softened. "You lost him. He died flying a stolen jet. He was shot down by one of yours." Rashid's voice turned distant. When I found what was left of him, I promised to end anyone who flew with your flag. Congratulations, she said bitterly. Almost got there. He glanced back at her. And you, what promise keeps you walking? She didn't answer. He didn't ask again. By dawn, they reached the edge of an old wadi, a dry riverbed littered with stone huts long abandoned. Rashid motioned for shade. We rest. Sun will kill us both if we keep going. Kira hesitated, then nodded. Her body was shaking now, legs swollen and stiff. She sank to the ground beneath the ruin of a collapsed wall, unzipped a pouch, and took a careful sip of what little water remained. Rashid sat a few meters away, cradling his broken arm. He winced but made no sound. After a long silence, she said, "You could have left me." "So could you." She looked at him. Maybe that's the problem. He met her eyes, not with anger now, but something closer to understanding. We were both soldiers once. The war just forgot to end. Hours passed. The wind shifted, carrying faint rotor noise, far distant but real. Kira stiffened. That's a search pattern. Rashid listened. Your friends. She scanned the sky. If they find me, you're done. He shrugged. I know. Something in his tone made her hesitate. You could run. I'm tired of running. The sound of rotors grew louder. Dust swirled on the horizon, faint but coming closer. She looked down at him. If they see you, they'll shoot first. Then you'd better tell them not to. She frowned. Why are you helping me? Rashid looked away. Because once someone helped me, and I killed him anyway. Maybe this is balance. She didn't answer. She just keyed her emergency flare, aimed skyward, and fired. The red plume streaked into the morning light, curling smoke above the ruins. Within minutes, 2 Black Hawks appeared, sweeping low. One banked, hovering overhead, kicking up sandstorms. Through the chaos, Kingston's voice crackled through loudspeaker. Reaper, if you can hear me, signal again. Kira staggered into the open, waving the flare. I'm here. Cheers erupted from the chopper. The winch dropped, ropes unfurling. Kingston himself descended halfway, grinning wide beneath his helmet. Hell, I told them you don't die easy, he shouted. Kira laughed weakly, voice raw. You're late. Behind her, Rashid stood in the doorway of the ruins, eyes squinting at the sun. The soldiers above spotted movement and raised rifles instantly. Target behind you, one yelled. Kira spun, shouting, Hold fire, he's not. But the command was faster than her voice. 3 bursts cracked through the morning. Rashid staggered, falling to his knees. Kira's scream cut through the rotors. Cease fire, damn it, cease. She ran to him, dropped beside his body. His breath came shallow, blood soaking his tunic. He looked up at her, eyes oddly calm. You should have let me go, he whispered. Tears burned her eyes. You were right about war. He smiled faintly. Maybe next time we'll both be wrong. And then he was still. The Black Hawk crew pulled her aboard minutes later. She sat against the metal wall, silent, staring at the desert shrinking below. Kingston handed her a headset. We're taking you home, Reaper. She didn't look up. Home's wherever the noise stops. He nodded, understanding too well. Then we'll find it. The pilot's voice came over intercom. Bagram confirms recovery. Repeat, Reaper is alive. Cheers filled the cabin, but Kira didn't join. She just closed her eyes, hearing the last words echo. We were both soldiers once. The war just forgot to end. Outside, the desert stretched on, endless, indifferent. Inside, a heartbeat finally slowed to something like peace. Why does survival feel heavier than dying? The chopper blades slowed as the Black Hawk touched down on Bagram's landing pad. The morning light painted everything in the same pale dust Kira had left behind, like time hadn't moved at all, but everything in her had. When the doors opened, the roar of base life rushed in, generators, shouts, the metallic clatter of trucks, too loud after hours of desert silence. Kingston was first out, boots hitting the tarmac, turning back to offer her a hand. "You good to walk, Reaper?" She took it, define good. He laughed softly, the kind of laugh you make when there's nothing funny left. Medical crews rushed forward. Cameras clicked from a distance. A few younger airmen froze in awe, whispering her call sign like it was folklore come to life. "Reaper's alive." She made it out. She hated the sound of it. A medic tried to lift her onto a stretcher, but she brushed him off. "I said I can walk." Her boots hit the tarmac one step at a time, each one heavier than the last. Behind her, the chopper engines faded, taking with them the only witness to what really happened out there. Inside the operations center, the room went silent when she entered. Caldwell stood by the main console, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. Ruiz was there too, helmet in hand, still wearing her flight suit from an unflown mission. The air felt like glass, fragile, tense, waiting to break. Caldwell was the first to speak, Captain Wolf. "Sir, you went AWOL, stole a multi-million-dollar aircraft, violated airspace protocols, and disobeyed direct orders." Kira didn't flinch. "Yes, sir." He stepped closer, voice low. "And because of that, 12 men are alive." She blinked slowly. Ruiz smiled faintly, "Told you," she ejected. Caldwell exhaled, tension leaving his shoulders like steam. "Command wants your statement in full. There's already a board convening. They'll want to know why you did it." Kira looked at him, eyes hollow but steady. "They already know, they just don't like the answer." He studied her for a long moment. Then, "Get checked out by medical, that's an order." She nodded once, turned to leave. Ruiz called after her, voice softer, "Kira." She paused. Ruiz walked up, eyes glinting. "Next time you try to be a legend, at least take me with you." Kira smiled weakly. "Next time I'll try not to need saving." "Yeah," Ruiz said, voice breaking slightly, "but you will." Hours later, the medical wing smelled of antiseptic and burnt coffee. Kira sat on a cot, leg bandaged, IV hooked to her arm. Outside her curtain, voices murmured, doctors, nurses, military police, all blending into background noise. She stared at the opposite wall, lost somewhere between exhaustion and disbelief. Every few seconds, she saw flashes, the canyon, the fireball, Rashid's face in the sand. The way he'd said, "Maybe next time we'll both be wrong." The monitor beeped beside her, marking time she didn't feel. Ruiz slipped inside quietly, dropping 2 coffee cups onto the table. "Figured you'd rather caffeine than morphine." Kira didn't look up. "You figured right." Ruiz sat across from her, hands clasped around the cup. "They're calling it the Canyon Run." Kira frowned. "That's supposed to mean something." Ruiz half smiled. "It will. They're saying you flew where no one ever survived, that you saved a whole team, that you broke every rule written," Kira finished. Ruiz's expression softened. "Sometimes that's how history gets written." Kira looked up at her. "And what about the parts that don't make the report?" Ruiz hesitated. "Like what?" "Like the man I didn't shoot, the one I should have hated." Silence. Kira stared at her coffee. "He helped me live. I watched them kill him." Ruiz's jaw tightened. "He was the enemy." Kira's voice dropped to a whisper. "So was I once." Ruiz didn't have an answer. By nightfall, the inquiry began. It wasn't a court, not yet, just a sterile conference room with too many lights and too little air. 5 officers at a long table, cameras recording everything, a flag behind them like a silent judge. Kira sat alone on the other side, uniform crisp but hands still rough, eyes red from too little sleep. Caldwell sat beside the board, not as her defender, not as her accuser, just as the one who'd been forced to balance both. "Captain Wolf," the senior officer began, "you are here to explain your unauthorized actions on Operation Mirage Canyon. Do you acknowledge that you knowingly disobeyed command directives? Yes, sir. Do you understand that your flight resulted in destruction of a U.S. asset valued at $68 million? Yes, sir. And do you believe your actions were justified? She looked straight ahead. I believe 12 men went home because I stopped asking permission. Whispers rippled through the room. The officer's face remained stone. You're aware that heroism does not erase insubordination. Yes, sir, but maybe insubordination saves lives heroism can't. Another murmur. Caldwell interjected quietly, let her finish. The officer leaned forward. Then finish, Captain. Why did you go back? Kira's voice lowered steady. Because I'd already left people to die once, and I couldn't live with that silence again. The room went still. Caldwell watched her, something shifting behind his composed expression, not pity, not pride, something quieter. Respect. Hours later, the decision came down. No prison, no court-martial, just a suspension. Officially, her record would say, grounded pending review. Unofficially, everyone knew it meant she'd never fly again. Caldwell handed her the papers in silence. She skimmed them, then looked up. This it? He nodded. You're lucky they didn't want a headline. She folded the paper neatly. They'll still write one. He exhaled. For what it's worth, what you did out there, it mattered. Not to them. He paused. To the ones who made it home, it did. She gave a small nod, turned and walked out. Outside, the night air was cool. The base was quiet now, the kind of stillness that follows chaos, where only generators hum and distant jets whisper past the stars. Kira wandered toward the flight line, drawn like gravity to the place where Warthog 51 once slept. The hangar stood empty now, lights dimmed, tools scattered where mechanics had abandoned them months ago. The ghost of her aircraft lived here in the oil stains, in the faint smell of burnt hydraulic fluid, in the silence too deep to fill. She walked to the center of the floor and stood where the landing gear used to rest. For a moment, she imagined it again, the wings, the weight, the hum that used to pulse through her bones. Her hand lifted out of instinct, fingertips brushing nothing but air. Guess we both made it out, she whispered to the emptiness. Just not the same way. A sound behind her footsteps, she turned. Kingston stood there, clean uniform, stitches above his brow, grin half-cocked. Figured I'd find you here, he said. She smiled faintly. You always were bad at goodbyes. Funny, I came to say thank you. She tilted her head. For what? For doing what none of us could, for not leaving us. Kira exhaled slowly. You made it home, that's enough. He stepped closer. You know, back in the canyon when you came over that ridge for a second, I thought we were watching a ghost. Maybe you were. He studied her face. You don't look like one. Give it time. They stood in silence for a while. Finally, Kingston said quietly, you saved 12 men that day. Maybe that's the number it takes to save one person twice. She looked up, puzzled. He smiled. You saved us once. Maybe we saved you the second time. Then he turned and walked away, leaving her alone in the hangar's vast quiet. She stayed until dawn. When the first light slipped through the hangar windows, Kira sat on the concrete floor, tracing the shadow where her aircraft used to be. Her reflection in the metal tool cart looked older now, but peaceful somehow. The ghosts in her chest had gone quiet, not gone, just quieter. She stood, zipped her jacket, and stepped outside. The morning air was cool, the horizon turning gold again, like the start of something new. She looked up, following a jet streaking across the sky, clean, fast, unburdened. For the first time, she didn't wish she was in it. Because some missions end not when you land, but when you finally stop running from the noise inside. Why do people remember the noise of war, but forget the silence that follows? 3 weeks had passed since the canyon. 3 weeks since the desert burned, since her bird fell, since the world learned that Captain Kira Wolf, Reaper, wasn't just a myth whispered in barrack stories. The news feeds called it Operation Reaper's Run. The Pentagon called it an unauthorized engagement. The soldiers who lived called it something else entirely, a miracle. Kira didn't read any of it. She avoided headlines, avoided people, avoided mirrors. Her leg healed slowly. The scars didn't. She walked with a slight limp now, a reminder of the desert that tried to claim her. The bandages were gone, but the pain came and went like memory, sharp, sudden, familiar. She spent her days in quiet corners of the base, writing reports that no one would ever read, filling out forms that couldn't describe what really happened. Every night, she found herself drawn back to the hangar, the one where Warthog 51 used to rest. There was something about that empty space, something holy, a place where the noise had finally stopped. Ruiz found her there one evening, sitting on the floor beside a toolbox, staring at the empty concrete. "You realize normal people process trauma with therapy, not airfield ghost tour," Ruiz said, stepping closer. Kira half smiled. "Good thing I've never been normal." Ruiz crouched beside her, resting elbows on knees. "They're giving you the Medal of Valor." Kira looked up, blinking. "For what?" "For saving 12 men who weren't supposed to live." Her tone was soft, but her eyes searched Kira's face, waiting for a reaction. Instead, Kira just said, "They don't give medals for guilt." Ruiz sighed. "You're impossible. And you're still here." Ruiz smirked. "Someone has to make sure you don't start another unsanctioned war." They sat in silence for a while. The sun slipped through the hangar windows, painting everything gold. Finally, Kira said quietly, "Do you ever think about the ones who didn't make it?" Ruiz looked at her. "Every day." "Then how do you keep flying?" Ruiz thought about it. "Because stopping doesn't bring them back, but flying reminds me I still can." Kira nodded slowly. "Maybe that's your kind of faith." Ruiz glanced at her. "And yours?" Kira's eyes drifted to the empty floor where her aircraft used to be. "Mine's learning to walk again." Weeks turned into months. The base moved on. New missions, new briefings, new names on flight rosters. Kira was not one of them. She'd been reassigned ground liaison officer, a polite way of saying retired in place. She coordinated training schedules for younger pilots, approved flight logs, and signed off on maintenance requests for aircraft she'd once commanded. Sometimes the young ones saluted her with a kind of reverence she didn't know how to return. Other times, they didn't know who she was at all. She preferred it that way. At night, she slept in short bursts, dreams full of sand and rotors, and a voice saying, "You should have let me go." One afternoon, she walked into the briefing room to find Kingston standing near the wall, arms crossed, grinning. "Captain Wolf," he said, "didn't think I'd see you again outside a miracle." "Master Chief Kingston," she replied, smiling faintly. "You look too clean, makes me nervous." He chuckled. "Paperwork'll do that to a man." "What brings you to my corner of purgatory?" He held out a folder. "Wanted you to see this." Inside were photos, 12 faces, each one familiar, the SEAL team she'd saved, smiling, whole. Kingston pointed to one. "Fletcher, legs gone, but he's walking on a prosthetic already. Says he's nomming it Warthog." Kira laughed softly, the first real laugh in months. "That's terrible." "Yeah," Kingston said, grinning, "but fitting." He turned serious. "They talk about you a lot, you know, the pilot who didn't quit, the one who made the sky sound angry again." Kira looked down. "They should talk about the ones who got them home." "They do," he said. "You're one of them." That night she couldn't sleep. She sat outside the barracks, the air cool and thin, stars burning above like silent witnesses. Somewhere in the distance, a plane took off, engines rumbling through her chest. That sound used to mean freedom. Now it felt like a reminder. She reached into her pocket, pulling out the faded photo she always carried, her old squadron, smiling on the tarmac. She traced the edge with her thumb, whispering under her breath, "Still flying without me, huh?" The wind answered in silence. She closed her eyes. In the dark, she saw flashes Rashid's face, calm even as he fell, the way he'd said, "Maybe this is balance." She wondered if he'd been right. Maybe saving people was the only way to pay for the ones you couldn't. 2 months later, a letter arrived. No sender, just military postmark and a single line on the envelope, delivered per request of Afghan Liaison Command. She opened it carefully. Inside was a folded piece of cloth, worn, sun-bleached, wrapped around a photo. The cloth was part of a scarf. The photo was of two brothers, one in uniform, one not, standing in front of an old MiG on the back, written in fading ink, "For the woman who flew like we once did." Kira sat very still, staring at it. Then she realized whose handwriting it was. Rashid. Her breath caught. She didn't know how the letter had reached her or who had sent it, but the weight of it felt heavier than any metal. She placed it on her nightstand beside the old squadron photo, one for those who'd lived, one for those who hadn't. Weeks later, Caldwell summoned her to his office. He didn't look up when she entered. "Have a seat, Captain." "Sir." He slid a file toward her. "You've been requested for reassignment." She frowned. "By who?" "Joint Rescue Command. They want you to run a training division, teaching combat pilots how to survive behind enemy lines." Kira blinked. "You're kidding." He shook his head. "They want experience, and after what you pulled, you're the closest thing to a textbook they'll get." She hesitated. "You're not trying to get rid of me, are you?" He smiled faintly. "I'm trying to give you back what they took." She studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I'll think about it." "Don't think too long. Some ghosts only stay quiet if you keep moving." She stood, saluted, and left, but this time her steps felt different, lighter, purposeful. A week later, she found herself in a classroom full of new recruits. Mostly kids, 22, 23, wide-eyed, full of bravado, the way she once was. They whispered her call sign when she entered. "That's Reaper. The one from the canyon." She ignored it, set her notes on the table, and looked up at them. "All right, first lesson." The room fell silent. "If you're ever flying low enough to see the fear in your enemy's eyes," she said, packing slowly, "you're flying too low." A nervous laugh rippled through the class. She didn't smile. "Second lesson," she continued. "When you're told to turn back and something inside you says you can't, make damn sure that voice belongs to courage, not guilt." This time silence, real silence. She looked around at the faces, curious, young, alive. "Third lesson," she said softly. "Don't wait for permission to do what's right, but know what it'll cost when you do." No one moved. Finally she said, "Dismissed." The recruits filed out quietly, leaving her alone in the empty room. She looked at the chalkboard, at her own words written across it. Then she erased them, one by one, until nothing remained but a faint outline. Later that evening, Ruiz found her sitting by the flight line again. The two of them watched a pair of jets streaking into the dusk, one after another, climbing toward orange sky. Ruiz broke the silence. "They're nomming a new aircraft after your mission." Kira raised an eyebrow. "You're kidding." "Nope, A-10 variant. Lighter armor, better engines. They're calling it the Reaper II." Kira laughed softly. "Figures. Replace the broken one with a better model." Ruiz shook her head. "No one's replacing you, Kira. They're just trying to remember." Kira watched the jets disappear into cloud, leaving thin trails of smoke that shimmered in the fading light. "Remembering's good," she said, "as long as it doesn't become worship." Ruiz tilted her head. "And if it becomes gratitude?" Kira looked at her. "Then maybe we both did something right." That night she stood on the tarmac alone. The stars hung low and sharp. Somewhere, an engine started, the soft growl of a plane being tested. She closed her eyes and listened. It didn't sound like war anymore. It sounded like life. And for the first time since the canyon, she smiled, not because she'd survived, but because she'd finally stopped running from what survival meant. Sometimes redemption doesn't come in the roar of engines. It comes in the quiet that follows, when you finally realize you don't have to fly to be free. How long can a legend echo before it becomes a lullaby? 2 years had passed since the canyon. 2 years since the desert screamed and the sky caught fire. And somehow the world kept spinning. They rebuilt the base. New hangars, new aircraft, new recruits who saluted faster and asked fewer questions. But among the pilots, the story of Reaper 51 never went away. It was told in flight lines in classrooms, whispered before takeoff like a prayer. If the canyon could be flown, it was because she flew it first. Kira never called it that. She just called it the day she finally stopped running. She lived quietly now. Still wore the uniform, still carried the scars, but her war had turned inward, the fight to stay human in a world that made machines of heroes. Light. The desert looked softer from the classroom window. Dust storms rolled like distant oceans, and the runway shimmered under heat. Inside, her students leaned over navigation maps, arguing headings and coordinates. Kira let them. Arguments were part of learning. When the chatter faded, she spoke. "Anyone remember what the A-10 was built for?" "Close air support, ma'am," one answered, "saving the guys on the ground." "Wrong," she said gently. "It was built to come home shot to hell and still flying." A few smiles. She walked to the board and drew a canyon, 2 jagged lines, narrowing at the center. "This is where physics says you die. This," she pointed to the line slicing through it, "is where faith says you try anyway." They watched her in silence, some realizing, some only pretending to. She capped the marker, her hand trembling slightly, not from age but from memory. After class, one of the younger pilots lingered. "Ma'am, did it really sound like thunder when you fired?" She smiled, no louder. "Aye, aye." That night she returned to the hangar again. They moved the new Reaper II inside, sleeker, cleaner, younger. The metal gleamed like polished bone under the floodlights. She ran her hand along its flank the way she once had with her old bird. "Feels wrong, doesn't it?" Ruiz's voice echoed from behind her. Kira turned, smiling. "You still sneak up like a ghost." "Occupational hazard." Ruiz walked closer, running her fingers along the wing. "They want you to do the dedication flight tomorrow." "I don't fly anymore." Ruiz's eyes softened. "You don't have to, just sit in it. Let the cameras see the legend touch her namesake." Kira looked up at the massive aircraft, the stenciled letters Reaper II shining white. "They built a machine out of a mistake," she said quietly. "Mine." Ruiz shook her head. "They built it out of courage, same metal, different story." Kira chuckled. "You always were better with words." "Maybe," Ruiz said, "but you were better at proving them." Aye, aye. Morning came with ceremony. A line of soldiers, photographers, flags. Caldwell had been promoted to general now, and even he looked uncomfortable under the heat. When Kira arrived, the crowd hushed. She still moved with a limp, but her presence carried more gravity than any medal. Caldwell handed her a small box. Inside, the Medal of Valor glinted against velvet. He cleared his throat. "For actions above and beyond." She stopped him. "Sir, let's not rehearse heroism. Let's talk about why we do it." The audience shifted uneasily, but Caldwell smiled faintly. "Your floor, Captain." She faced the younger airman. "You think courage is about not being afraid. It is. Courage is what you do when fear makes more sense. Every flight, every mission, every life you carry in your hands, it'll ask you who you are. The hard part isn't answering, it's living with the answer." Silence, wind brushed the flags behind her. She pinned the medal to her jacket herself, then closed the box and handed it back. Give the next one to someone who still believes medals matter. Applause rippled slow, unsure, growing only when Caldwell nodded once. Ruiz leaned close as the crowd dispersed. You never did like spotlights. They make it hard to see the stars, Kira said. IV. The nights after the ceremony came quieter. Too quiet. Sometimes she dreamed of the canyon, not the fire, not the crash, but the moments just before, the stillness between heartbeat and impact. She'd wake with her fingers twitching, searching for a throttle that wasn't there. In the morning, she'd walk to the memorial wall outside the hangar. Names of fallen pilots etched into black glass. She'd place her palm against it, tracing a few she knew too well. Then she'd whisper the name that wasn't there, Rashid. One morning, she found flowers at the base of the wall. Desert lilies, rare in this climate. No note, just a folded scrap of cloth tied around them, the same kind as the scarf from the letter. Someone still remembered him. Maybe one of Bashir's men, maybe someone who'd heard the story. Kira knelt beside the flowers. He'd like that, she whispered. Balance. Months passed. The world outside shifted, politics, peace talks, new wars wearing old names. Inside the base, things stayed the same. Engines roared, paperwork piled, life continued its endless march. Kira began working with recovery teams, the ones sent to find downed pilots in remote regions. She never flew with them, but she guided them through radio silence and fear. Her voice became legend there too, calm, unbreakable, the sound that said keep breathing, keep fighting. Sometimes, after a mission succeeded, she'd step outside the control room and look up. She'd whisper, that one was for you, old friend. No one knew who she meant. She liked it that way. One evening, a young lieutenant came to see her. Nervous, fresh from flight school. Name tag read Fletcher J., the same surname that once lay bleeding in a canyon. Ma'am, he said, standing too straight, my father asked me to give you this. He handed her a small wooden box. Inside was a bullet dull, twisted from impact. My dad said this was pulled from his vest the day you saved them, he continued. He wanted you to have it. Kira turned it in her palm, feeling the weight of it. Tell your father I already do, she said. The lieutenant hesitated. He also said something else. He said you're the reason he still looks up when planes pass. She smiled, faint and tired. Then I guess we're even. Years have a way of blurring. Time softens what adrenaline sharpens. When the reassignment orders finally came, civilian advisory role, Flight Safety Division, Kira accepted without argument. She packed her few belongings, the scarf, the bullet, 2 photos, and a notebook filled with training notes she'd never published. On her last day, Ruiz met her by the runway. They stood shoulder to shoulder, watching a pair of A-10s thunder down the strip and lift into the rising sun. Still gets to you, doesn't it? Ruiz asked. Kira nodded. Always will. You ever think about flying again? Kira smiled. Every day, I just don't need to anymore. Ruiz slipped something into her hand, a small dog tag, worn smooth. Found it in the wreckage years ago, Ruiz said. Figured it belonged to you. Kira turned it over, her own name faded but legible. She closed her fingers around it. Guess part of me never left. She moved to the desert town nearest the old canyon. Bought a small house near the ridgeline. Most evenings she sat on the porch with a battered radio tuned to air traffic chatter, the voices of strangers weaving through static, coordinates, altitudes, call signs. She never answered, just listened. Sometimes hikers passed and recognized her. They ask, "Are you really the Reaper?" She'd smile and shake her head. No, she stayed in the canyon. but every anniversary, she hiked to the overlook, the one that gazed down into the scar where the fire had been. She'd stand there as the wind howled through stone corridors and whisper the names. Kingston's men, Sloan, Rashid, Warthog 51. Then she'd close her eyes and hear the echo, faint, distant, still sounding like thunder. IX. One spring, the military built a memorial at the canyon's edge. A ring of black glass panels etched with the call signs of every pilot lost in those mountains. At the center, a bronze statue of an A-10 banking low, wings tilted, nose down, eternal flight. They invited her to the dedication. She almost didn't go. But Bashir sent a letter handwritten. You should see what you made possible. So she went. Caldwell was there, older now, his uniform heavy with years. Ruiz, too, still flying, hair streaked with gray. When they unveiled the memorial, wind swept through the canyon like applause. Bashir read the inscription aloud. To those who flew when fear said turn back. Kira stood in silence. No cameras, no speeches this time, just wind and stone. She knelt beside the plaque, placed the scarf and bullet beneath it, and whispered, "We made it home." Ruiz laid a hand on her shoulder. "You think they hear us?" Kira smiled. "If they don't, we'll keep saying it until they do." X. That night she stayed behind after everyone left. The moon rose over the canyon, painting the rock in silver. She sat on the edge, legs crossed, the wind humming through the ridges like a hymn. From her pocket she pulled the dog tag Ruiz had given her. She held it up to the moonlight, reading her name one last time. Then she let it fall. The metal caught the light as it tumbled into darkness, disappearing with a soft clang that echoed for seconds before silence swallowed it. Her war was finally over. XI. Years later, a new generation of pilots stood in that same canyon. They carried lighter jets, smarter computers, but still felt the same weight when they looked down. Before every flight, instructors told them a story about a pilot who flew through hell and came back quieter than she left. They didn't know every detail. They didn't need to. They just knew her name. And somewhere far away, in a small house by the ridge, an old radio still whispered their call signs through static. A woman sat by the window, listening, smiling every time she heard a voice break through the noise. Sometimes she'd whisper back, not words, just breath, just presence. Because legacies don't end. They fade into the people they save. XII. On her final morning, the sky was clear, desert blue, the kind that hides nothing. She woke early, made coffee, and stepped outside. In the distance, a training formation of A-10s rumbled low, their engines vibrating the air. She raised her mug in salute, still loud, huh? The sound passed over her, echoing down into the canyon, and for a moment she thought she saw something, a glint of silver, a flash of wings, the ghost of Warthog 51 cutting through the horizon. She closed her eyes and smiled. Then the sound faded, and the world was still again. They found her later, peaceful, sitting where she'd always sat, head tilted toward the sky, a notebook open on her lap. On the last page, a single line written in steady, careful script. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Epilogue. Years after her passing, cadets visiting the Canyon Memorial still touch the plaque engraved with her call sign. They say if the wind is right, you can hear the faint growl of an A-10 in the distance, a sound that shouldn't exist anymore, yet somehow does. And when it fades, the silence that follows isn't empty. It's full of memory, of sacrifice, of one truth every soldier learns too late. Courage isn't about surviving the mission. It's about what you do when survival no longer needs you. The desert keeps her secret. The canyon keeps her echo. And the sky still remembers her name.